Hey guys, this is a DVO Topaz rear shock. What's so great about a DVO Topaz rear shock is that it can be fully serviced by a home mechanic. The main reason this shock can be serviced by a home mechanic is that all the suspension fluid is pressurized using a bladder system in the piggyback. When you're servicing that shock, it's clearly best to have a new bladder kit to install in the shock, but sometimes I've been working on the shock and realized that I needed a bladder kit and didn't have one. Today I'm going to show you a technique I use which will allow you to prolong the life of the bladder a little bit until you can get a new kit and get it installed. So let's get into it. So here in front of us is the part of that has the reservoir on it. I've stuffed a paper towel down in the reservoir to simulate the suspension fluid that would normally be down in this reservoir. Here's the bladder, which inevitably will wear out, and this one is one that is worn out here. Here's the cap that goes over top of the bladder like that, and what happens is that's pressed down in there, and then there's a clip that goes in and holds it together. So I've gone in and I've inserted the bladder down in the reservoir, put the retaining cap and the retaining pin on so that it's in the way that it should be. And now I'm going to go in and fill this up with air just to show you that it will not hold the air. Now what I've done, I've attached the air pump to the bladder, and as you can see, the air pump is sitting down at 0 air pressure. And I'm just going to pump it up. I have a couple of pumps in there. Normally this would only take a few pumps to get the air pressure up. But as you can see from pumping it, I cannot get it above 50 psi on there. And if we wait a minute, which I'm going to do here, and come back to it, you'll see that it leaks down pretty rapidly. So I've given this thing about 10 minutes, and as you can see, it's not gone down to 0, but I have lost about 10 or 20 pounds of air pressure from when I pumped it up. So this thing is slowly leaking. For this system to work, this reservoir has to have pressure in that air bladder between 170 and 200 pounds, and it needs to hold that pressure consistently. Now, what I found is that it's pretty rare that the air bladder itself will just give out. Normally what happens when you're disassembling the shock and taking the air bladder out and putting it back in, it will cause it to get a little bit warped or distorted, and that's why it won't work. So there's a kit that's sold by DVO that you can buy for about 10 bucks that will completely fix this problem. But if you're like me, and sometimes you're working on these shocks and you don't have a kit handy, what are you going to do? Well, let me show you. So here's an O-ring. The outside diameter is about 26 millimeters, inside diameter 24 millimeters. The thickness is 2 millimeters. And so what I do in this case is I'll take this O-ring and stick it on the bladder cap like that, so that you have it on there, and then I will take the bladder cap and insert it, insert the bladder on the bladder cap, and then you have to be a little bit careful because you can pinch that O-ring, and then press that down into the into the reservoir, and then pull it tight. And now I'll show you what happens when you pump this up. So here you go. I've got the air pump onto the reservoir and the bladder cap, and let me just pump it up here. And right away you can see I'm getting a much higher pressure than I was able to get last time. I'm going to take it up to about 200 here. So as you can see, I don't know how well you can see that, but I've got it right at about 200 on the gauge here. So let's set it for a while. Let's let it sit for a while, and I'll come back to it. So I was away from the this setup for about a half hour, and from looking at it, it's not lost any air pressure from the time when I first pumped it up. So I believe, and in my experience, this this O-ring solution will work. I don't know how long it would last. I've had it on a bike for a couple of months, and it did fine. I was a little worried about it, but it did work well enough that I thought it would be important to show you guys what I did so that you could consider it as a part of your overall work with this shock, as it does give you a convenient workaround if you need it. So there you go, guys, a workaround if you don't have an air bladder for your DVO Topaz. I hope I've given you something to think about, and I'll see you guys at the top.